Yesterday, we asked what's next in the trenches for the Cincinnati Bengals. Is that answer Trent Brown and just Sheldon Rankins? Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco. He's your host, James Rapine. We're the Locked On Bengals podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day, free and available everywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. If you're new to the show, we're pushing 20,000 subscribers on YouTube. I'm not sure how free agency week didn't get us over that mark, but if you haven't subscribed yet on YouTube, please do hit that button and the thumbs up while you're there. Really appreciate those things and those of you who make us your first listen and are everydayers. Today's episode sponsored by Gametime, who can help you get tickets with ease. Use promo code LOCKDOWN for $20 off your first purchase of tickets in the Gametime app today. James, let's talk about what's next in the trenches now that we have a little bit of an idea of what's next in the trenches, as it appears that perhaps the Bengals are shifting their focus from the two trench players the Bengals had in on their visit last week, Teair Tart and Mekhi Becton, and that attention is going elsewhere to big names on the tackle market while they try to figure out what they're doing on the defensive interior.
And this would make sense. Going after Trent Brown, looking at Mekhi Becton. Those are the two main scenarios. I know we talked about Illuminor. I know we talked about Mike and Wenu. But to me, I think we all discussed Becton for a reason. I think we mentioned Trent Brown because it makes a lot of sense. He fits the stopgap piece of this, which I think is something they do need at tackle. And let's be honest, if they roll into the draft, and I don't care how good the draft is, I don't care if they land their franchise right tackle in the draft. I do. But I'm saying, even if you tell me they're doing that, they cannot go into the draft with Jackson Carman and Deontay Smith and Cody Ford as your starting right tackle, whoever you wanted to pencil in there. And I know you don't play games in April or March and all of those things, but they have to add someone, because the draft is unpredictable. And even if it's the Joe Alt, right, which it won't be, but if it's the top tackle in this class, who knows if that guy's going to be ready to go plug and play right away, whoever you do end up getting at 18, whether it's J.C. Latham, Marius Mims, whoever. So this makes a ton of sense. If they are interested in a guy like Trent Brown, he's someone that's been there, done that. He's shown versatility to play the left side. Let's say Orlando Brown Jr. gets nicked up in a game, and you draft a right tackle in the first round, well, you won't necessarily have to move that guy to play left tackle. He can come in at right, and you could put Trent Brown at the left tackle. So he does have the versatility to do that. And I do think that matters. When they look at these guys, Mekhi Becton obviously had that as well. So to me, if they're able to get something done with Trent Brown, it would make a ton of sense. And in a way, and I know people were stressing about the Mekhi Becton visit, but in a way, and this is without seeing the deal, not knowing if a deal is going to get done, but it could be a blessing in disguise, because I think if you're trying to win right now, which the Bengals are, Trent Brown is the better player. Mekhi Becton may end up being the better player, but today Trent Brown is certainly the better player.
And with both players, there is that injury risk. To your point about drafting they're still drafting a tackle with a premium pick, regardless, I think, of who they sign. Unless things go really sideways in the draft and the guys they like are unavailable at the picks they want and they have clear, better players, they're going to draft a tackle in the first two rounds. Because after that, I mean, Roger Rosengarten maybe in the third round is a guy that you would like
like him
as a piece that could be your rookie, but he might go in the second round. So once you get to the third round, I think this tackle class will dry up and we'll be in the familiar waters of trying to find the diamonds in the rough, the guys that come out of nowhere. Because typically with the tackle, you do need to spend a premium pick, and the Bengals would be in position to do so this year to supplement Trent Brown, who I mentioned this yesterday. He just can't get through a season healthy at 6'8", 370 is at least what he's listed at when I look at PFF. He's missed significant parts of 2023, 2021, couldn't stay on the field in Vegas either year he was there, played complete seasons in 2022 and 2018 and 2016. So he's been around since 2015. He's been around forever. He turns 31 in April. And when he's on the field, his length and size makes him a good pass blocker. Just go listen to Max Crosby talk about going up against Trent Brown in practice and how he was like, all right, I'm good. I got Trent Brown once in practice. I'm good. I don't need to do anything else. I feel good about myself. He's going to be a good pass blocker when he's on the field. He's going to be susceptible to speed. When you go look at the games where he struggled, it's against guys that are bendy, fast, freaky athlete types. But he's going to use the length well. He's going to use the size well. He's going to be a good pass protector, more or less. You have to worry a little bit about penalties in his two complete seasons in 2022 and 2018. His two most recent complete seasons, he had 13 penalties and 10 penalties in those seasons. So there are some penalty issues with Trent Brown, but he's also gotten through, 500 snaps, 600 snaps with just a couple of penalties. So it's not like it's a consistent thing for him either. And you would have, I think, unquestionably the biggest tackle duo in the NFL if it was Trent Brown and Orlando Brown. And I assume this is a good question for Jay Morrison of Jay's Got Stats fame. The largest pair of players with the same last name in NFL history on the same team.
That's
I assume
fair. Yeah,
that would be the case.
sure. Yeah, probably. That is a good one. Just looking, because he would obviously play right tackle for the Bengals. And just looking at PFF, he played right tackle in Vegas, right tackle for the Patriots in 2021. He had 6 penalties over those 3 years. And you're right, he didn't play as many snaps, but still, it seems like the penalties are a little bit lower when he's on the right side. Now, part of that might just be overall playing time, staying healthy, all of those things. So we'll see. But he's the best option that you have right now. It doesn't feel like he's got a huge market. So go get him. Go get him because he does raise the floor. And the Bengals are going to throw it all over the yard. And you want a quality pass protector that can play both sides. And if you can get that at a reasonable price, even if they had their starting 5 locked in, I would still be interested. By the way, if Mekhi Becton is just going to hang out there, I would be fine with it. To me, it's not Becton or Brown. I'm open to both. Becton probably wouldn't be because that would mean he's definitely a backup. Brown probably wouldn't love that if he knew that Becton would be here. It's something the Bengals probably wouldn't do, especially before the draft. But me personally, I would be open to it because you can't have enough depth. We know that. We saw it in 2022 and the Bengals were in the AFC Championship game with 3 backups starting, protecting Joe Burrow at Arrowhead. No one likes that. No one wants to be in that position. So we know they need to bolster their depth. They first need to find a starting level right tackle. We'll see if it's Trent Brown. I certainly would be on board if they're able to get something done.
It seems to be the direction. There's some momentum in that direction right now. I think similar to T.O. Tart, they're going to need to talk to Trent Brown and get a feel for the fit and get a feel for whether he's ready to come in and play and be part of the culture that they've established. I think that it also could be an instance of them taking the money that they had allocated for T.O. Tart and Mekhi Becton and saying, you know what, maybe instead we take that money and we go try to get a little bit better tackle if Trent Brown is that culture fit and is that veteran that we're interested in. And I wonder if if it is Trent Brown, is it another 1-year experiment at right tackle where it's another 1-year deal after they've had 1-year starter, 1-year starter, 1-year deal, then Jonah Williams. And then they're hoping that they finally have a long-term solution if they get a guy in the draft. Are you giving a 31-year-old, if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, a 2-year deal? They've done a lot of 2-year deals this year that have had essentially free outs in the second year. So you wouldn't put it past them in that regard, but also wouldn't surprise me if this is a 1-year deal idea if they are looking at the Trent Brown solution.
Yeah, it wouldn't bother me if they went 2 years because, like we mentioned, he, one, doesn't have a huge market. So what's the money going to be? I'm sure it's good enough. It's quality swing tackle money. You want to look at it that way. And so let's say he did get passed up by a rookie midway through the year, or get passed up by a rookie for week 1, or maybe it's next year. That's fine. You have a guy in Mr. Brown who can back up Orlando Brown Jr. and also back up that rookie. So wouldn't hate it if they did go that route. We'll see if they do. You mentioned 2-year deals. They did get a 2-year deal done with a soon-to-be 30-year-old Sheldon Rankins, who is hilarious, and we will discuss him as he was officially introduced as the newest Bengals defensive tackle coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry when to buy tickets to your next big event, and Gametime is fast and it's easy, and it's the way you need to buy tickets for all of the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They have killer last-minute all-in prices, views from your seat, the best price guarantee that makes sure that you're going to get the most bang for your buck. And yes, you can go in the Gametime app, and before you download those tickets, before you make that purchase, you can see the view you're going to have, whether it's NBA, whether it's college hoops with the tournament starting. Maybe you want to watch the University of Cincinnati and the NIT. Gametime is going to have those tickets as well. And I said that with a tear emoji, Jake, because they're not dancing again. My Bearcat's still on the outside looking in. But whether it's the University of Cincinnati basketball team, whether it's your favorite NFL team, baseball right around the corner, Gametime has the tickets for you. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On for $20 off. That's LOCKEDON. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Sheldon Rankins met with the media in Cincinnati on Monday, and you're right, it's hilarious. And a big personality was introduced by Zach Taylor, as a guy who's been beloved by his teammates everywhere he went. Players that previously played with him, notably Trey Hendrickson, who were in the building, spoke very highly of Rankins. And something about 98s from Houston that come to play for Cincinnati could easily see Rankins, as a veteran he is, stepping into a leadership role right away on this team.
Yeah, no doubt. I think blew me away. I really did. And not that I knew a lot about Rankins, so maybe that's part of it. But to me, for him to be as honest as he was, open, his words, he said, I speak freely. I love it. And I think that honesty is going to matter. And he's going to be looked at least initially, as someone that's replacing DJ Reader. And I'll say this, the one thing they do for sure have in common is the fact that they are honest and they are real. And Rankins right away, just straight up real with us. And I love it. I know you probably watched it. I did post the entire thing on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. I tweeted it out. It's like 21 minutes. And by the way, Jake, as we were talking just now, I loaded a clip in. He had 3 sacks against the Bengals on November 12th or 13th or whatever it was when the Bengals lost to the Texans 30-27. And his takeaway from that game was, I should have had 6 sacks. I should have had the game-winning strip sack. He was mad about the ones he didn't get on Joe Burrow, not the ones that he did get. And I asked him, and he literally went play by play. We're not going to play that for you. But here is a clip of Rankins meeting Zach Taylor in person after agreeing to a deal with the Bengals on Monday.
They didn't slide to me. I don't know why. Listen, that is the first question I asked Zach when I met him. Before I said hey, how you doing? Anything else, it was like, and again, excuse my French, I speak freely, guys. You're gonna get used to it. I said, why the didn't you slide to me? And we just kind of laughed about it, and he was like, you know what, man, we probably should have. I'm like, well, I'm glad you didn't. I even asked Ted, like, I think it was like midway through the game. I was like, y'all, this is the game plan. Cool. Not gonna ask again. I'm not gonna make y'all overthink it. That's what y'all want to do. Let's do it.
Love the sense of humor there. The in-game Ted Karras, like, that's what y'all gonna do. All right. Don't overthink it. I'm enjoying. I'm having a good time. And he also mentioned his familiarity with Alex Kappa, going back to his time in New Orleans with when Kappa was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So those guys have been going against each other for a long time. Really bright guy. Football recall, really, really strong. Trey Hendrickson talked about this with Jeff Hobson on Bengals.com as well. The football IQ for Rankins way up there. Talked about playing different roles with the Jets than he did with the Texans, where he was more focused on run game responsibilities with the Jets than he was with the Texans, where he's asked to be more of a penetrating defensive tackle. Thinks he can do it all. And the way he carries himself, the way that he interacted with the media, that's where the sense of leadership comes from for me, is the guy's been around, and combined with the fact that, he's very well liked in the locker rooms he's been in. You can see the fit from both a football perspective and a locker room culture perspective. And, the Bengals have gone after him before. he talked about that too. That was pretty interesting to me. And it was just right this time. It worked out this time. But if you go watch the full thing, I think every single person is going to look at that and come away with a pretty high opinion of Sheldon Rankins.
Yeah, I agree. He nailed it. It's the best introductory press conference maybe ever. Like Burrow was really good as a rookie, like, and you felt it through Zoom when he was at his parents' house in Athens. I was like, holy God, they got one. Like, not that you doubted it before, but you felt it through the Zoom. And so that one, Jamar Chase saying, I'm going to break every record they have, talking about Chad and AJ and Isaac Curtis. It's a pretty good one. I think outside of that, I don't know. There aren't many. So I love it. And one of the things that stood out, he's very aware of he's just a pass rusher, stinks at, and I'm sure he looked at his PFF grade. A lot of people have, right? As far as run defense goes, but he doesn't think he's just a pass rusher. He thinks he's going to impact the game as a run defender. He thinks he's going to be able to play 3 downs and be a huge factor. And I hope so. I certainly think he's talented and has the right mindset. I love his attitude about it, because he clearly celebrates very little and focuses on how he can improve. And when he's been healthy, he's been a really high-end player. Missed a couple of years or long stretches of years towards the end of his New Orleans tenure, reestablished his value with the Jets, played really well for the Texans, and hopefully he hits even a new level here for the next 2 seasons. Wouldn't shock me. I think he's in a good situation, and the Bengals certainly need him to bolster their interior pass rush, because everyone's worried about Reader and defending the run. If you tell me this Bengals pass rush is much improved because of what he can bring and how he can unlock those edge pressures and all of those things, then sign me up, because that's something they certainly needed.
And you can defend the run without a DJ Reader. There are teams in the NFL that do this every year. It just gets harder when you have the elite all-world interior defensive lineman, nose tackle type in DJ Reader versus a guy like Sheldon Rankins. And you don't really have the guy that's going to line up in the A-gap on the team right now, in my opinion. You could ask Sheldon Rankins to do it sometimes. You could ask BJ Hill to do it sometimes. They'd be okay there in spurts. But that is still a hole. And even if Rankins is, to quote the little sidebar, if you're watching on YouTube, more than just a pass rusher, which I think he is, and that's fair to say, despite what his PFF grades say about a couple of years in his career. Run defense grades, I don't think the most consistent thing with PFF in the first place, and really weigh in any missed tackles. Like DJ Reader will have a play where, I'll be watching it on tape and I'll think that's a +1 with PFF. He pushed that guard 3 yards into the backfield, forced the back to bounce, but he missed a tackle. And it ends up somebody else goes and cleans it up for a no gain. And that ends up being a minus play for Reader and PFF sometimes. Like, I've gone and checked on this. So sometimes the run defense grading isn't always something I agree with anyway. Along aside to say that Rankins can provide value in the run game as well. He's done it throughout his career at times, and it'll depend on what they're asking him to do. And he does bring you some versatility. I mean, 6'2", 305, that's that relatively compact 305. He's not 6'6", 305. The way Eric Armstead is this massive, tall dude in the middle who is, 295 even or something. Maybe he's also 305. I don't know, but can provide value, I think, in both phases of the game. But still, I need them to get deeper there. I still need them to bring in another player, because you can't go into the season with just Zach Carter, Jay Tufele, and whatever rookie or rookies they draft behind Rankins and BJ Hill.
No doubt. And they have to add. I will say this: I looked, and Rankins was blamed for, I think, 9 missed tackles with PFF, so that might have a big element to why his grade is the way it is. I didn't really notice that, at least grading wise, in previous years, and he's had some good years in run defense too, from a PFF standpoint. And again, we're just talking from that. I think he's a huge boost, and that doesn't mean they're done adding Tier Tart. It feels like that's unlikely. I wouldn't rule it out, but I don't think that it's imminent. And so where do you go from here? Do you pivot to a Calais Campbell? I would. I think you would. Will they? Probably not, but I would, because it's 1 year, and who gives a damn if he's 52 years old or 38? It doesn't matter. It's 1 year. You're not committing long-term to him. You're not marrying him. You're going on a few dates. Does it really matter if she's 38? The answer is no, Jake. It doesn't matter if she's 38. Go on a date so the Bengals can get deals done. That's what we need. And we will continue by reacting to week 1 of free agency coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with the 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info, investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. The 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. You must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA is available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer.
When we talk about grading 1 week of free agency action, knowing that there are moves yet to be made, this is going to be based on moves that they didn't make and moves they did make, the players that they did not end up signing versus the players they did, the holes that still remain, and the remaining options they've left for themselves at those positions. And the big ones that you can think about are the direction they've gone at right tackle, not being in the top of the market there, the direction they've gone at the interior defensive line, where they obviously were not terribly involved at the end with the massive deal that Christian Wilkins got. And those are the 2 holes that we're still talking about on this team, but there are a lot of moves that you can like. And none of the moves that they've made are moves that you could really see backfiring on them. They're all moves that they can get out of after 1 year. All of them, including Drew Sample's 3-year contract that doesn't appear to have any dead cap hits involved after this year. But I like the moves they've made. It's just when you look at what was available this free agency and what we really struggled with going into this free agency, when we were trying to come up with what would an ideal free agency look like from our perspective, is the things that they needed and the sorts of players that were available in this free agency just didn't line up. And that's where, without grading on a curve, James, I think it's really hard to get to an A for the Cincinnati Bengals this year, just because, like, maybe if they sign Nwenu and Wilkins, you can get to an A, but you're talking about 2 top of market deals for guys that just for the Bengals, I mean, you're way outside of reality at that point.
Sure. And not even for the Bengals. Like, how many teams are doing that? And at the same time, if they, let's say they had signed Nwenu, we'd still be saying, hey, if the right tackle's there at 18. Still. But they probably wouldn't.
They wouldn't. Yeah, that's the difference.
And that's the difference. And so if you find the franchise guy at 18, then you'd rather that than spend whatever it was, 57 or commit 57 million to a guy over the next 3 years. So I think you're right. It's tough, but I look at all of their moves in a vacuum. One, the fact that they got something for Joe Mixon after the world said that anyone that thought that the Bengals would cut Joe Mixon was insane. Well, clearly that's what they were going to do. So they get something for him. They get it back, and we haven't done a deep dive on these guys yet. We still will, of course. There's time to do that. Zach Moss is good. Zach Moss is I was talking with Joe about this. Goodberry. He's like Giovanni Bernard light in some ways, and he's better in other ways. But it's comparable from a character standpoint. When I was listening to him talk last week, that's how it reminded me. I was like, man, he's a Gio clone in some ways. He's not as good of a receiver, I don't think. He's not necessarily as athletic if you look at the 40 times and all of those things.
He's not as athletic, no.
But he's a better between the tackles runner. Yes. And that's what you want him to do. That's what they're going to lean on. And I think he fits really well with Chase Brown, and he's great in pass protection, which is exactly what you want. So I think he fits great. So is that move for 2 years, $8 million? Is that an A? I think so. The problem is we're still looking at, are they going to add a veteran corner? Will they get the Trent Brown deal done? Are they going to add a defensive lineman? Like, if they go out and add Calais Campbell, well, that changes how I feel about this defensive line. It just does. I think it establishes something that, again, is probably not going to happen. But I really like the Rankins move. I wonder what else they do. I do think they'll add something, but I think it's a C+ right now. C in that range, it's about average. It could go up. It just depends on what they do in the trenches, essentially, and backup cornerback spot, a few other spots like that.
This is where your grading paradigm comes into play, and like how are you grading on a curve, and what's the baseline? Like what qualifies an A, B, C, D, F? Because right now they have an F for right tackle, right? But that we expect to change. Is signing Trent Brown an A? I have a hard time saying signing Trent Brown is an A, but you have a serviceable right tackle. So if you know you need to sign a right tackle and you get a serviceable right tackle for, say, it's a solid deal, one that isn't an overpay or an underpay, because that's kind of where the Bengals have been this year. I think they've been paying roughly appropriate value.
Do
Is
you
that
think
an
it's
A?
realistic that Trent Brown could give them Jonah Williams level production next year? Because I do.
If he's healthy, but he
Okay.
hasn't been healthy more often than not.
And we would have said that about Jonah a year ago.
The track record is much longer for Trent Brown. Like you've got, like I said, he's made it through 3 out of 9 seasons. Not that he was necessarily starting all those seasons, but when he's been trying to be in starting roles, he's missed half of the season, about half the time.
Sure. But anyways, the point is, because I get it, Jonah had dealt with injuries and he cost more last year than Trent will cost this year. And so there's a chance that you're getting better value, that you're getting better play for the money. There's a chance, which is how I would view like he would probably be a B. I'd have to see the contract, all of those things. I think it would be a B.
So maybe that makes it a B instead of a C, because maybe you've got a guy that you think can be above average, and maybe you're bullish on the injury projection and you assume that he can stay healthy for 15 games in the regular season. He can play for you in the playoffs and he doesn't deal with a major injury. Then you can see it being a B or even a B+ with the potential to be higher. And I think all these moves do have the potential to be higher. Like Mike Gesicki in a vacuum, there's a reason he's getting paid $2.5 million, but that's a value deal. You can't knock it. It's cheap. He doesn't cost them anything. And the athletic ceiling and the vertical threat that he presents is something they haven't had at tight end, where you can say, oh yeah, you could see that in a year, look back and say, yeah, that was an A signing. Is it an A right now? You could even argue that it is because of the money that it's paid and the cost of it, but you got to see how it works out and whether that chemistry emerges the way that it generally has with Joe Burrow and tight ends. And same could be said for Sheldon Rankins, where they paid a little bit more perhaps than expected for Rankins for a probably above average player, a player they desperately needed, a guy that could step in and be a leader for this team and can play multiple roles on the defensive interior, as we just discussed. Hard to knock it. I don't dislike any of the moves, like I said. It's just which move is really pushing them over the top or getting them back to where they were when they had a really good defense in 2022. And that's where the draft comes up and is still of paramount importance. And 21 and 22, a lot of the core players on this team came from free agency, and they did not find the replacements for those core players through the draft, at least not yet. We'll see who emerges this year. We'll see what happens with Myles Murphy and Cam Taylor-Britt and DJ Turner and Jordan Battle and even Dax Hill. And if those guys emerge and become core players, then that's how you overcome a free agency class this year that couldn't provide you with that next core the way that, the Trey Hendrickson, DJ Reader, Chidobe Awuzie, Mike Hilton free agency kind of acquisitions did. Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, Orlando Brown. Like, they have core foundational pieces that they brought on through free agency in the past, and that's not going to be the case this year, which is a little bit of a nervous place to be.
I don't know if
they're all 2-year deals. So in that sense,
Cheeto gave you 2 years.
But regardless, okay, one example, but either way, like Trey Hendrickson is a core foundational player for this team that's going to play 4+ years.
Sure.
Orlando Brown's going to be their starting left tackle for probably the life of that contract.
That's fair. Are we sure Zach Moss won't be here for 3 or 4 years? Or
well, probably. Yeah. I'm pretty sure of that.
I'm not.
I would be
if
surprised.
He plays well this. Yeah, I guess. Are we sure that Rankins is just a 2 and done? We sure?
Not sure, but probably. You think the Bengals are going to give another contract to these guys after they've got like probably what the Bengals see as the final years of their relative prime already locked up for 2 years?
I think if Geno Stone plays well this year, he's getting an extension.
Geno Stone that could be one.
All right, so Geno Stone, maybe. The running
I'm just
back, I
saying-
get it, because he's a running back. I get what you're saying. They also didn't have the big spend, and I think it coincides with that, to go
Sure.
back to our conversations in the past. And
Which I don't hold against them, but I'm saying, like, how can you get to that point where you had these pieces that they brought in the past that have been core pieces of these championship level runs they've had, where those guys weren't available this year? And that's where the nerves come from for me, in terms of these guys from recent draft classes need to hit. So they have guys to extend, and they need to hit in this year's draft class where they're picking a little bit higher than they have the last couple of years.
yeah, I think it's twofold. One, they'll keep adding. Two, it is just a weird free agency. Like we were talking about at a defensive tackle. There's just not that dude there. You couldn't find the next Reader. And so it was either take Reader or move on. And they moved on to a guy who's certainly a better pass rusher and a different style. So we'll see. But I do. It's tough because I like their moves. But to your point, I agree. It's not like there's this guy that you would pencil in to multiple Pro Bowls like Trey Hendrickson, or pencil in to when he's healthy, he would be playing at a Pro Bowl level like DJ Reader, or pencil in he's going to play at the top of his skill set at the nickel cornerback position like Mike Hilton, or be an absolute steal as a CB1 like Cheeto. Maybe some of these things happen. Geno Stone could be an All-Pro this year, but you have to see it first, you know.
And this could be a case. What have I been asking the Bengals to do this entire free agency period is be smarter than us. We were not the most excited about Trey Hendrickson when he signed. The Bengals got that right. And the Bengals need to be more right than us again, I think, for some of these guys, for any of them to get to that level, James, like you said. And to be abundantly clear, I don't think that any of these moves are bad moves. I don't see any of the moves they made and say, man, I really wouldn't have done that. But they're missing that move the needle kind of guy. They got pieces they need, complementary pieces they need to fill out the roster. But this year's free agency group just didn't really offer that type of player they've identified on the 3 and 4 year contracts in the years prior. And that's where it's hard for me to go much higher than, C+, C, B-, that range of grades. And we'll see what happens over the rest of this free agency period, because there is time left, and maybe they make a trade, right? Maybe there's a trade for an interior defensive lineman that blows us away, and it's Derek Brown from the Panthers, and suddenly we feel great about the defensive interior. And we'll see what they do as they get creative and try to figure out what else to do on that side of the ball. Until next time, that's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Thanks for listening. Hoo day, and have a good one.